Okay, so yeah, we're gonna do a little model here of an MP3 tiny USB MP3 player. This is a tutorial I found online, so I reviewed it and then I'm gonna adapt it now for the class. So it's basically I just screen grab some images. So it's this file here, and then some of the screen caps from the existing tutorial that's online for this, and sort of the major components and things like that. I did find other references for this particular model of MP3 player that were sides and bottoms and tops and all that stuff, but we'll give it a go. So we're going to use this as a template, or something to hang on to talk about basic sculpting techniques here in Modeler. Okay, so let's go. So first off, if I just bring up this image, right, we can see it's it's got a height, it's long, and it's kind of rounded, and it has this kind of it's a pretty big bevel, to be honest, and then it's trimmed here, so this piece kind of comes out, and then there's a cap here, and I think there's the USB, so you can plug it into the computer and copy music onto it. And then we got a little like dongle here with a little corkscrew kind of ring here, and then plus minus volume, and then I guess on off here. So we'll see how far we can get with that, but that's going to give us a general idea. So I'll just minimize that. I'm going to switch to the cylinder. So this is the clay tool here. So this is going to be the cylinder primitive. Remember, it was rounded quite heavily. Now there's fillet, which is gonna, let me get it a little closer for everybody here. Yeah, so fillet to round the tops, but there's also chamfer, which isn't round, it's a nice flat kind of facet. So looking at the image, right, it looks like it's a pretty crisp flat line across the top here, and then it softens. So I'm wondering if I combine, if I do chamfer first and then fillet. Yeah, see, it's not going to round this part. It's just going to round the two edges. So I don't know. I don't know what to do, to be honest now. This is just supposed to be for a rough. So I'm going to do that because I think that looks to be about the right radius for this. Now, this program, the whole point of this is that it's not a traditional modeling platform. We're not modeling in polygons here. We're modeling in volume pixels, which are voxels, which are these squares. They're three-dimensional pixels in 3D space. So it doesn't react or work like most polymodeling software. So the point is that this is supposed to be a quick SketchUp, quick mock-up of a design, your design, a design. It's not supposed to be accurate. It's not supposed to have every detail in it. It's just supposed to be quick and dirty in a way and fast. So that's why I've got to stop myself from being in the mindset of I need to make everything perfect, because I don't. That's not the point of this package. All right, so I've said that to myself as much as to anybody else. Okay, so these white dots will scale the object. So again, I can scale up and down. Control Z will undo. I can scale front to back. Control Z, I can scale left to right. Control Z, and I can also use this dot off to just increase and decrease, proportionately scale the object, just make it bigger or smaller. I'll undo that. And then if you want to do just one side, let's say the bottom is sitting on the ground, I like where it's sitting, but I want to make it taller. Well, if I hold down Control and grab a dot, it will only scale from that side. So no more proportional scale. No Control, just the left mouse button. Boom, I'm scaling on both sides. Hold down Control, and you're only going to pull out from one side or the other. Okay, so that said, I'm going to make it wider because I'm looking for the roundness here on the end, which is fairly round, to be honest. So maybe not quite like that. And then I'm going to So one thing to keep in mind is if you want to use symmetry in this package, symmetry is only available across the x-axis, which is this red axis. So symmetry would currently be left and right. So if I right mouse click, I get the actions menu. And if I turn on, well, symmetry is on, but if I turn on mirror symmetry, you can see that it's across the x-axis, right? This red line. So this line coming down. So we always want to be aware of our orientation when we're sculpting, because if we do need symmetry, it's only available in one axis. So if you rotate an object after you've created it or do anything like that, it will rotate this object's orientation. So right now it's symmetry across the x-axis, but that's because I haven't created anything yet. This is just a tool. And what symmetry does is it repeats, even if you're doing radial symmetry, right? It repeats an action a bunch of times. So currently I'm working with the clay tool and primitives to create a solid model, and I haven't done that yet. So what this is doing is it's just repeating an action, and that action is a clay tool. So let me turn it off. I'm going to hit R, which is going to reset this back into the middle of the world. I'm just going to see, hopefully this works because I don't want to ruin this. Restart this video, but bear with me. If it doesn't go right, then I'll revisit this. But I'm going to hit spacebar to create an object. So I've created a version of this now. So now that I have this object, I'm going to hit V, or I can do my select tool. I'm going to scope all the way out and grab this. I'm going to rotate this now. So let's say I'm going to hold down Control and click on the blue circle, and that'll flip it 90 degrees. And then if I go in here and I say, you know what, I want to work on this symmetrically left to right. So I'm going to go get I'm going to select this object. I'm going to go get the warp tool. I'm going to make sure it's on gizmo, so you can see down here where it says placement. This is a brush tool, so I just see the brush when it touches an object, but I want to see it all the time. So there's the gizmo, gives me a three-dimensional kind of sphere shape. And if I turn on symmetry right now, you'll notice the symmetry is no longer left to right, it's front to back. And it's like that because I took this object and I rotated it. So now X is front to back. X is no longer left to right. So that's the weird part of symmetry in here. If you do want to maintain symmetry, you should rotate your tool, the clay tool, to orient the object the way you want it and then create it. Then you'll maintain symmetry. But if you create an object and then rotate it, then your symmetry is going to also rotate with that, and it will no longer be across the world axis. So it's a little tricky. I'm just going to Control Z this back until I go back to before I rotated. So again, now if I did my warp tool and I turn on symmetry, it's still left to right because I haven't rotated the object. I just created it and I left it there. As soon as I rotate this object, it will also rotate these warp tools or any other tool that I'm going to use on that object. So just be aware of that. Okay, anyway, so what I want to do now is I just, actually I'm going to undo further because I didn't want to create an object just yet. Why, what the hell just happened? Why did everything disappear? Okay, there we go. All right, so there we go. All right. So I'm going to hold down spacebar and I'm going to drag this forward and back. And this program, we can't be all that accurate because we don't have snaps in here. We can't measure the length of anything. So everything is just kind of eyeballed a bit. So when I look at this reference now, and this object, I would go, this is a bit thick. So I could either increase the rounding on this because it looks like maybe it's a bit longer even, but I think it needs to be a bit shorter. So there's going to be a lot of this back and forth when we're sculpting in Modeler. So I'm going to undo what I just did, and I'm going to increase the fillet a little bit, and then I'm going to just shrink the size slightly as well. And then I'm going to go back and create it again. So spacebar, drag in the y-axis forward, drag in the y-axis back. Go nice and slow here so that we get a smooth line. If you go really fast, it'll tend to be kind of bumpy. So that would be it now. And when I look at this, it should be rounder. And maybe it's still a bit thinner. The bevel I don't mind, but the roundness, it could be a bit rounder here. So Control Z again. So a bit rounder means I got to scale it in this direction a little bit to round that off. And then I set it a little bit thinner. And then again, spacebar, drag forward, drag backwards. And I think I might be a bit long now. Yeah, it should be stubbier. So I'm going to Control Z that and try it again. So what you can do is I'm trying to use these marks as measurements. So I'll just move this out of the way for a minute. I'm going to tumble, and you'll notice when you tumble, boom, I'm at the top here. I can't, so this is like, tells you that you're not working in kind of true 3D. The camera won't go past this point. Same with the bottom, it stops. So that can be useful because now if I do this, I've tumbled as far as I can. So I know that I'm roughly looking straight down on the object, which can be helpful. So now when I hold spacebar, I'm going to drag out to this first mark till it just gets covered, and the second mark till it just gets covered. So that's too short. So let's go to the second mark here. And I think if I go to the second mark there, it might be too much. So I'm going to go 2.5. I'm looking on my other monitor right now at the model, the reference. A little longer maybe. So that, if we look at this now, right? I think a rounder still. But what I'm going to do is instead of undoing and redoing, I'm just going to make this a bit rounder. So I'm going to pull this further forward so it's rounder. And then I'm going to drag it out to the front here. And I'm just going to hold spacebar here and just push this out ever so far, just so I get a bit more rounded of the end. So you can see maybe, or I'm hoping I can see that this is a little rounder than that. Doesn't seem that way, does it? So spacebar, drag it forward, drag it back. Yeah, now it seems too pointy. I can't win here. I think that's as good as I'm going to get with the cylinder. I wish this was a bit bigger. I think it's just an optical illusion though. Okay, so again, I tend to get into the weeds. I way overemphasize the details. I love the details. I could care less about the big picture in a lot of ways. So I just want like these tiny little elements and bevels to be perfect, and then the whole model, it's kind of garbage. It's just like, I don't care. That little detail is amazing. So I got to stop myself from doing that because, as I said earlier, this is just a quick sketch, rough in of an object. So now that I've got, I think, the roundness right, I ended up having to extend this too long. I'm just going to model this the way it is now. I'm not going to do it again. Okay, so there we go. So I now have the base of this done. So I'm just going to hit the select tool just to get rid of the widget and everything so that I can just check this out. So I'd say we're pretty good. So I think the first step I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this cap piece. So you can see there's a little bit of a height difference here, and it does this really unique kind of like it's carved out this way and then it's carved out that way. So we're going to try and replicate that as well. So I think the best way to do that is I'm going to duplicate this object I have because I need to match this cap with the shape that exists. The best way to do that is usually just make a duplicate and then remove the parts you don't want. So for instance, I just need a little cap piece here. So I'm going to duplicate this whole thing and then remove 75% of this and just be left with the back. I'm also going to scale the duplicate up slightly, and that's what's going to give me the height difference here. So let's try that. So it's purple or blue they call it. So I've selected it. Control D will make a copy, or you can right mouse click and make a copy here in the actions menu, but it's just Control plus the letter D. And that's pretty common. It's the same in Maya, and I'm sure it's the same in Blender and other 3D packages. So Control D, and you get this weird, you know, blocky, almost like a camo pattern, modern kind of camo pattern. That's just because there's a duplicate object here. One of them is selected, so it's that blue purple, and the other one isn't. It's just the copy object or the original object. And because they exist in exactly the same position, the computer doesn't know which one to put on top of the other because they're identical. They're in the identical position and the identical size. So it's just vibrating basically, like it's showing the purple one, showing the orange one, purple, orange. And it does this in Maya as well, except it does it in more like black and white or gray and black and that kind of thing. So anyway, one of them is going to be selected. You can see the blue purple one. So if I just pull this up, you can see indeed that's my copy. So I'll put that back with Control Z. And now that we have an object, we've lost the ability to scale these. You can move them, you can rotate them. But the only scale you can do is proportional scale. So if I just wanted to make this wider or longer, I'd have to use the warp tool for that. I can't just scale the sides out anymore. That's kind of odd. We can always scale objects in Maya with the scale tool. It doesn't matter if it's created or modeled or whatever. So it's a bit of a weird choice, but anyway, I am then going to grab this white dot and make this bigger. Now I have no idea how much bigger I need to make it because I can't see. So it's going to be, again, a lot of back and forth, trial and error. Again, it's just supposed to be rough, so don't get carried away like I probably will. All right, so I'm going to take this purple object now and I'm going to add a clay tool to this, and I'm just going to use the clay tool that we already have. I'm just going to also make it a little bit bigger so that it sticks out the sides, out the top, and out the bottom. And you can almost see here that it's making this kind of sharp line. So I'm going to see if I reduce the fillet, if that gets sharper. And it kind of does, right? Kind of. So to remove material, you can hit Tab, and that's going to put you into erase mode, which is right there. Or you can just click erase mode. And there are 3 different subtools in erase. So we've got erase, we've got split, and we've got crop. We will cover those in a minute. Right now I'm just going to work on erase. So you get this red transparent, that's for erasure. And if you, again, hold down spacebar and drag this, it's going to erase things. So you can see it's kind of getting the shape I want, but I'm getting some artifacting here. So this artifacting, I'd like to clean that up, and the reason for that is the resolution. So if we just hover this plus minus icon down here in the bottom right hand corner, it'll show you the resolution. So of course, look at how big those squares are relative to the size of the object. So I need to increase the resolution, or I need to make my objects bigger. So if I scale my objects up really huge, this grid stays the same size. So obviously if the object gets bigger, more of the grid will touch the object, and it will be relatively smaller. But I'm just going to keep it the same size. I'm just going to up the res. So there's a lot of that in this modeling in this package as well. So a lot of back and forth, trial and error, because we can't really judge tell. We do it, oh, not quite enough, undo, change the size of your clay tool, redo. Also, there's going to be a lot of back and forth with the resolution, up and down, up and down, up and down, to get the right resolution for the action we're doing, and then maybe returning to a lower or higher version later. So I'm going to undo all of this because I need a better resolution. So I'm going to go Control Z. Okay, so now we're back, and what I'm going to do is just up this resolution. I went up 3 times. Let's try this. So spacebar, and that eats away a bit of the thing, and then if I hold it down and drag, it will remove. Now I think as well this aliasing is a little better, but I think part of it might be this needs to be maybe a little bit thicker. So what I'll do, let me just see, if I hit tab, that'll take me back. Yeah, so I think I actually want one more resolution, and I'm going to scale this up a bit more. So I'm going to undo again, and this time I'm going to go plus once more. So I have quite the, oh, So plus once more. That's better. And then I'm just going to hit V, which is the select tool. So now it's selecting this object. I'm going to make it a little bit thicker just so that it's obvious what's going on. And then back to my clay tool. Now my clay tool needs to be a little bit bigger as well. So I'll just make it a bit wider, I think. And it's not quite what we want. Like this looks like this should also be kind of rounded. So round here to a point and then round here to a point. And now what I'm getting here is I'm getting a line that, oh, this needs to be a bit taller. There we go. I'm getting this. I'm going to turn the fillet right off, make this a square piece. Yeah, so I'm getting this roundness, which I think actually that might be an issue. I don't think it's, I think it's a bit wider. Stop. Okay, so a little bit wider here. So maybe this needs to be a bit flatter because we want this to be a bit of a shallower cut. So you can see from this point to this point, there's not much distance here. So from the side point to the top point, I have quite a bit of different distance from the midline out. So if you think of this as being a circle, so I think that's about right. And then it is cutting through this. So now, so what if I push this in? I'm going to do that, I think. So that's going to give me this shallow cut. And it's going to come to about here. If I see this, like it's kind of like stopped right on that. So I'm going to try this. So tab, spacebar, and forward. And we want to worry about how shallow that is. So a little bit rounder than that. Maybe a bit more. All right, maybe like that. It's a bit too short now, so let me undo these. All right, so now I know this needs to be a bit rounder. Spacebar. That's about right. And one thing you'll notice, that aliasing is greatly reduced, which is good. So now to eat out the side here, I think I'm going to reset this to back to a normal cylinder. So you click your box here, your tool, and it will get rid of any of your slider actions and stuff. I'm going to flip it on its side. So I'm going to hold down. So just as a review here, if you want to rotate something, you grab the circle and it'll rotate freely. If you hold down Control while you rotate and you keep your cursor inside these dots, so you see there's these row of dots going around the outside, it will do from 0 to 22.5 to 45 to like 60 to 75. Oh, sorry, I'm outside the... So 0, 22.5, 45, 67.5, 90. If you go outside that circle, it does 15-degree rotations. So you can rotate freely any amount, decimal place wise, just grabbing the circle and rotating. If you hold down Control and rotate, you'll do 22.5 to 45 to 67 to 90. And if you go outside that circle, you'll do 15 degrees. And then at any point, if you hit R, you'll just reset it. If you hit R again, it will go back to the middle. So I'm going to do this. I'll hit Tab just because it makes it easier to see the shape. I'm going to hold down Control and click the circle, and that automatically does a 90-degree rotation. So it just flips it on its side. If you do it again, it'll flip it around. So now it's technically upside down and then flat and then back to where we started. And it'll do that on any axis. You won't see it on the blue one. So let me just hit R to reset it. Okay, so I'm going to flip it over on the side. So I'm going to control click. Oh, yeah. And then the other thing, well, you won't see it here. I'll show you on another tool. But if you control click an arrow, it will flip the object as well. So it'll flip it. So for instance, let me just show you that. So there is, it's got a taper this way, but what if I wanted the taper the other way? I can hold down control, click an arrow, and it will just flip it on that axis. So anyway, control clicking, click, and then I'm going to make it wider. And now I'm getting the round part of that piece. So where did my player go? So I want to kind of gouge out a round bit. This looks a little round. That doesn't look quite so round. So I'm going to flatten this out. I'm going to hit tab for erase. I'm going to hit spacebar and hold it. And you can see it's just eating away this little chunk here, which is pretty close to that, right? It's just subtly round. So let's hold down spacebar and let's drag it forward until we get close here. And we'll carefully I may have made this a bit thick, but like I said, it's exaggeration purposes. The sides are thicker than the tops and the bottom, which makes sense because this is a rectangle. I should have proportionately scaled it, but I not proportionally scaled it, but I should have warped it a little bit. That's good. Maybe we will be able to use the warp tool to push the sides in a little bit. Anyway, if I see this now, boom, boom, and that kind of works here, that ridge line is consistent through. Is it absolutely 100% accurate? No, not really. But it is close enough. Click, click. Actually, I think it's 2. So let me undo one step. Let me flatten it a little bit. And then spacebar drag. Just to flatten that out a bit more. Okay, I'm happy with that. It's close enough in design-wise that you get a sense of this is a cap and it's just a reproduction and it's fine. Again, we're not dealing with accuracy. Quick SketchUps, quick mock-ups, quick sketches of your designs. All right, done and done and dusted. All right. So this, luckily enough, is on a separate layer. Which is fine. That's what I wanted. It's only because I was at the top level. So when you're at the top level, you get your select tool and you're all the way at the top. When you create a new clay tool, it automatically puts it on a new layer for you. So you see how these are grayed out and this isn't. So the object I create now will not be combined with the existing object. That's different than, so for instance, let me just hammer this home, right? There is no connection between these two surfaces. As opposed to if I select this and drill into it, so I double clicked it, so this is now an active object. So if I get my, I don't know why the pivot of the clay tool is off, that is pretty weird, but if I hit spacebar now, you'll see that because this object was active when I created a new object, it automatically combined it. So we have to use layers to isolate our tool so that when we create an object, it's created on a separate layer so it doesn't automatically attach it, because what would have happened is if I had duplicated this while I was working on this layer, it would have attached this to this object, and that's not what we want. Okay, what we do want though is I'm going to subtract this object from this object to make a whole, because you can see this is solid currently. So I'll undo that. Well, that allows us to talk about booleans. So I'm going to take this object, I'm going to right mouse click, I'm going to go to my boolean actions, and I'm going to, that's subtract mode. So whatever was active, whatever was blue or purple when I turned on the booleans, that becomes the boolean object. Red indicates subtraction, so it will subtract this shape from any shape it's touching, which is currently the cap. So I'm going to hit apply, and that's it. And then I'm going to clear my Boolean. And then when I select this and move it up, it's been, this shape was subtracted from this shape. So now I have an actual cap. Is that important? It's not too important, but if we were going to bring this into a 3D package, we definitely want to minimize like that solidness, and we definitely want to subtract here. I'm a bit upset that this is thicker than this, because there's no easy way to fix the thickness here. The only thing I could do, like we could eat more of this away by making this a bit wider, but then we'd see an air gap. What I need to do is bring the outer surface in. And that's going to be virtually impossible at this stage, so I'm going to just live with that. That's something that I probably should have thought of earlier. So, no biggie. Like I said, it's just a rough, right? There's a cap. We can see it's a cap. Once we get about this far away, it's not going to matter that much anymore, so we're good to go. Okay, what are we in here? We're in 31 minutes into this already. So I should probably break this into more sort of easily consumable bite-sized chunks. So let's try and keep them around 30 minutes. So I will stop here with video 1. This will be going into a playlist. And yeah, you can move on to the next video right now if you want. I haven't created it yet, but I will in a second. Okay, so that's video 1 done. That's our start shape and our cap done. Next, we will be doing this screen cutaway and the button. And we'll see how we get on for time. We may also do these holes that are put in here, or divots. They're not really holes. They don't go through, I don't think. Okay, so that's coming up next. So we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.